Because we have only 2 readings for morning prayer, the preacher can choose between the Old Testament and the Epistle. So Father David emailed me earlier in the week to ask which I wanted. I read them both, and there, standing foursquare in the middle of Isaiah 64 verse 9, was my father. Now, my father was a little man. He was so short that even in his 20s, if he went on a bus with his 6-foot cousin, he usually got half fare. He served in the Navy throughout the war, and he was universally known as Titch. He could never get a ready-made suit that fitted, and my mother had to shorten his shirt sleeves by a good 6 inches before he could wear them. But inside that rather small frame, there was a colossal character. At the slightest suggestion of poor service or unfairness or maladministration, off he would march to the shop or the office, brook no excuses until he got to see the man at the top, and it was always a man in those days, and he would pull himself up to his full 5'4", plonk his trilby hat down on the desk and say, "Now look here." "Now look here" would be followed by an accurate and succinct description both of whatever the problem was and what would be required to put it right, and the time frame within which appropriate remedial action must be taken. It invariably worked. The book of Isaiah is a compendium of 3 separate prophets. The first is genuinely called Isaiah. He tells us so. The other 2, whose names we don't know, were speaking and writing in the same tradition, which ran from the 8th to the 6th century BC, starting a century before the Israelites were driven into exile and finishing as King Cyrus of Persia allowed them to start going back to Jerusalem. And today our reading is from 3rd Isaiah, and I think 3rd Isaiah must have met my father. There stands the prophet, foursquare in front of God, spelling out how tremendous God used to be, acknowledging that the Israelites have been a pretty miserable and feckless bunch, and suggesting that this is God's fault. You were angry, and we sinned. Because you hid yourself, we transgressed. Yeah, okay, we're a pretty rotten lot, but it's because you abandoned us. That's the problem. But look, Lord, you can still put this right. We are the clay, and you are our potter. Do not be exceedingly angry, O Lord, and do not remember our iniquity forever. Now consider, we are all your people. Now, look here. It's almost enough to make you feel sorry for God. But God is listening. He knows his chosen people, the Israelites, have been punished very harshly for what successive generations of them have done. He knows there have always been a loyal nucleus of people who've kept the faith despite everything that has happened. He will bring them back to Israel. When Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, they were in the wilderness for so long that no one who was part of the original Exodus survived to enter the promised land. It was a clean start. Now, no one who originally went into exile in Babylon is alive to go back to Israel. Another clean start. And in our gospel, after the suffering, which will be another time of terror and hardship and false messiahs, the Son of Man will come again, bringing another clean start for the faithful people who remain. Well, what a promise for the beginning of a new year. And it is, of course, a new year. It's Advent Sunday, when we put the last year behind us and start our preparation to welcome the mystery of the Incarnation at Christmas. And what a year to put behind us. Pandemic isn't divine retribution in the way that the prophets talked about it, but it has certainly forced us to take a very hard look at how we interact with each other, with the natural world and the whole global environment. For the first time in many months, there is the hope of a vaccine and of some more effective treatments. So there are choices to be made. Do we all pile in together for Christmas because that's what we always do? Or do we behave responsibly and shorten the time until we can all meet more freely? Do we stockpile vaccines for ourselves, or should we fund the World Health Organization and the poorer countries to vaccinate their own people, which will stop the global spread and the risk of reinfection much more quickly? Do we close our borders or offer our help? Do we turn up the heating or put another jumper on? Do we think that what we think will make no difference anyway? Do we think we have no influence over these and many other decisions? Well, if so, that will certainly be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Surely, as Christians, as people who should help the least of God's people because they're doing it for him, surely we have a responsibility to try. It's saving a starfish. You know the story of the man who saw a boy walking along a beach on which thousands of starfish had been washed up in a storm. And the boy was picking up starfish and throwing them back into the sea. "What are you doing that for? You won't make any difference," said the man. "It'll make a difference to this one," said the boy, throwing another one back. It's being alert to every possibility of making a difference and not worrying about what to say, because when that time comes, God will give us the words. Surely we want to contribute to a less divided, fairer, less greedy, more compassionate society. Surely we want to flourish without destroying our planet in the process. But we can't just assume that everything will somehow sort itself out in the end. We can't risk waiting for other people to take the initiatives. They just might be waiting for us. Let's learn from the year we've had and step forward into the new one, determined to make a difference, even to one starfish. Remember 3rd Isaiah, standing up to God, pointing out what's wrong and insisting that he listen. I'd suggest a New Year resolution, except that notoriously they don't last more than a few days. Instead, make a firm promise to God. If you see something unjust or unfair or just plain wrong, find the right person to confront, stand up, clear your throat, and say with confidence, "Now, look here. Now consider, we are all your people." Amen.